white people didn't invent slavery. In fact, they were the first to end it. Yet somehow, saying this is controversial.
In 1860, I want you to guess how many white individuals owned slaves. Like what percentage of white people in the U.S. owned slaves? Across the entire white population in the U.S. in 1860, 1.4% of individuals owned slaves.
You really have the nerve to sit up and say only 1.4% of people own slaves. Like that's supposed to mean something. Now after watching that, I asked myself, why on earth would a black man use these type of talking points? It's as if he's trying to downplay slavery. It's like he's saying, look guys, slavery wasn't that widespread, so stop blaming white people. And then I looked at them comments, and it all started making sense to me. I see who your target audience is. So you creating content like this, thinking that it's gonna get you approval, thinking that it's going to distance you from the black community, making it seem like you're one of the good ones to them, it's never gonna work. And it's funny how you only used that 1 year when chattel slavery in America began 200 years prior. That 1.4% doesn't sound like a lot until you really break it down and you realize that that 1.4% represented the most powerful and wealthiest families in America. They controlled the politics, they controlled the economy, and they controlled the laws and the future of this country. And just because 1.4% of people owned slaves during that time doesn't mean that the rest of the population was innocent. Who was catching the slaves? Who was enforcing the laws? Who benefited from the cotton, the sugar, the railroads, banks, the universities that was built off that labor? Slavery wasn't just about ownership. Even the poor white folks who didn't own slaves were promised a social status above the black folks. That's why they defended it, because they benefited from it.
Europeans who were white came to West Africa.
Right.
They saw West Africans. They said, okay, these people are less advanced and this must be fundamental to what they are. They're just a different class of humans, right? And they're inherently worse in all sorts of ways. That was the European mindset.
Got it.
Now, fast forward hundreds of years later, I think what's happening is actually kind of a reversal, where now there's people who are saying, oh, white people are inherently worse in some way.
That's
but
true.
Instead of it being technologically worse or civilizationally worse, it's morally
worse.
So what happens is anytime we have these discussions, because we're talking about race, we're actually focusing on the wrong thing when we need to be focused on the software, not the hardware. There's nothing about being inherently white or inherently black that makes someone inherently morally superior or inferior. But every time we talk about oppression and hostility and hatred, we racialize it inherently.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
It's race essentialism. So we say, oh, all white people. Well, what about Slavic people? Like Slavic, the word literally comes from slave. So Slavic people, like in Eastern Europe, they're enslaved by the Ottoman Empire.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So,
Oh my God, I love you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the slavery all throughout history, but what happens is in America, we become so hyper fixated on what happened in America, which is important. Of course, we should mention slavery, and you never denied that.
No,
But I think the point that you were trying to make, and is difficult in that environment, is there's a much broader context here.
Yes.
And the evils of slavery are not particular to melanin.
I literally said that. I'm like, you cannot paint only one race with this.
Yes. So
and not all white people.
Exactly.
Perpetuated this.
Exactly.
Jillian,
So just to finish
hold on.
here. So in the analysis of American history, of course, we need to acknowledge that
100%.
yes, there was a racialized institution of slavery, and in that racialized institution of slavery, white people were placed at the top of the hierarchy, and black people were placed at the bottom. That doesn't mean that current white people identify with that mindset, because it was a culture, it was a software that was adopted. and it happened to be adopted by these people. But all throughout human history, people have been justifying slavery through different methodologies. This is just the American way that we did it. We should be aware of it so we don't repeat it.
Yes.
But we shouldn't be so fixated on that we conflate someone's color of their skin with their ideology.
Can I just want to follow up on one thing he said before we lose the thread. What you just said about the, persecution of, Slavic individuals by the Ottoman Empire, that like really spoke to me and resonated because, my parents came here in the late 1970s and early 1980s. They were refugees because of the fact that they were under, Soviet rule in Armenia. So they were oppressed under Soviet rule. But prior to that, the Armenian people suffered a genocide and persecution by the Ottoman Empire. And so the history of, my background, my ancestors, was one of persecution, slaughter, just terrible treatment. So when,
this is
when all of that gets erased and the only thing that matters is literally the color of my skin, and I get lumped in with like the Europeans who, brought slavery here to the United States, I just find it deeply offensive. And what it does is it creates this environment it breeds more racism.
And that's why...
Yo, so we back in here for another edition of F-ya-Motha, and I really don't like to do a bunch of videos about race. That's why they're sparse in my archives. But I hate when I'm listening to black people with dumbass talking points talking about defending white people. Let me just put that out there. Now, a lot of what he said, I don't disagree with. What the parts that I disagree with is that, while they're not inherently evil because they're white, because they have been on the top of the hierarchy for so goddamn long, they've been mistreating us. Like, then there's that. We can't escape that. We're not going to ignore that. Yeah. You released us from slavery 156 years ago. You gave us civil rights, 60 years ago. And police brutality is ongoing. How am I not supposed to think that you're inherently evil when you're doing inherently evil shit? Now, people are going to say, well, I'm not doing that. It's not you. It's as a collective of people. It's as a group. As a group of people, white officers within law enforcement around America are shooting black people that are unarmed. Now, there's cases here and there where somebody got a knife, like the Black Lives Matter activists in the UK, and some nigga that was spastastic on the side of the road, which people on Twitter were talking about the body cams of cops are backfiring, which they're actually not. Those are outliers. That's the rule. That's the exception, not the rule. The rule is literally motherfuckers like Tamara Rice being gunned down, a 12-year-old playing with a cap gun at a park. They didn't even park the police car. They jumped out like John Wayne and shot the kid. Flandel Castillo was shot by a police officer, Yanez, that they had video of him literally doing Nazi salutes with a Confederate flag in the background. I think he was Hispanic. Alton Sterling was shot in the back while he laid on the ground for resisting. I don't think that warranted getting shot by the police. Like shit like that. And then people say, well, they should have just complied. George Floyd, same thing. Well, he died from an overdose. When clearly, if he had been overdosing off of fentanyl, he would have died 28 minutes prior from the video. You don't suffer an overdose and almost 30 minutes go by and then you die. At least not with fentanyl. It only takes the tip of a pencil for somebody to OD. So the fact that he was still cognitive and answering their questions and shit like that, like, we can rule that out. The cops was dead wrong. What's the commonality? They were white. The cop that shot, forgot what his name was, Dubois up there in Columbus, Georgia, shot him in the head because he was reaching for a bottle of gin. I don't even think he was reaching for the bottle. I think he had a bottle of gin in the side of the door, and he went to close the door, and the man fired on him, shot him in the head. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say that, I entirely agree that, what I'm saying, they're not culpable. They make themselves look inherently evil by things that they do, whether it's the mistreatment, the injustice system, police brutality, all type, you name it, all type of mistreatment that be happening to black people or brown people. for no cause, no just reason. And people give these stupid, well, you should have just complied, or it's not all white people. It don't have to be all of them. But when a lot of them, more than the average, is doing fuck shit, yeah, it has to be pointed out. Like that couple up in Cincinnati, Ohio, that got into a brawl and the white woman got socked out, and the Russian man got beat up and got packed out. It was because the Russian man actually slapped the black man. But before the video was rolling of the black man being slapped by him, everybody thought it was just a bunch of black people just packing out white people just because it was the thing to do. And then when the video came that the Russian man had actually slapped the black man, which popped off the whole melee, then everybody kind of like got quiet. I noticed that. So yeah, people need to put things in perspective. And I don't know what's up with these black people that be like pandering and for white people. She goes on to say, the woman goes on to say that, yeah, my family was part of, the genocide by the Ottoman Empire. Bitch, that was 600 years ago. What are you talking about? And on top of all this, she goes on to say that she hates when people conflate, because she looks white, she hates when people conflate her in the mistreatment of oppressed people. It's like, because ma'am, you're not going around broadcasting that you're not Caucasian, and from the naked eye you look Caucasian. I'm just gonna put that out there. You look like a white woman. Why would I not think you're a white woman? All right, now if you're an Armenian woman or whatever ethnicity, you should probably specify to people that you are not a Caucasian woman, because you got the blonde hair, you got the narrow nose, you got the porcelain white skin. You look like a Caucasian woman. I'm just gonna put that out there. Even though I know she's from the Young Turks, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're like Armenian, some shit like that. So technically they're not Caucasian, they're not white people, but they look like it. It will behoove you. The other host on her show, on the Young Turks, he don't look like a Caucasian man. It's easy to point to distinguish that, okay, my man ain't white. With her, she looks like a white woman. You might want to point that out to people when you meet them, so they don't confuse you with being a Caucasian, because you look like a Caucasian. And we sorry if you get hit with some strays because you look white. You're the one trying to pass as white. You don't look ethnic at all. In any event, if y'all like this episode, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out.